Good morning, everybody. You are so very welcome to Virginia Civic, Cultural and Library Services Centre. That is a mouthful that I'm still trying to get my tongue around most of the time. But actually what we have here in this building, some of you may or may not be familiar with this new building houses the library, Virginia Library, and then it also houses the Rammer Theatre. And our shared building opened last year on Friday, the 13th of October, 2023. And I am delighted to say that your book is our very first book launch in the building. So it's a memorable one for everybody. It's a memorable one for us, and it's a memorable one for you. Can I first extend a welcome to our Cathaoirleach of Ballyjamestough Municipal District. We have TP O'Reilly here with us today, so thank you very much for coming on a Saturday morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, you know Anthony Quinn very well, the author. I met Anthony a number of years ago, prior to all of the things that we've been through, many moons ago, before pandemics and all of that happened. Anthony did a project over in Cootill Library, where I used to work. And Anthony worked with a group of library members. And out of that, I think really Anthony was one of the catalysts who really began an interest in creative writing in Cootill, because they now have a lovely poetry group. There's a wonderful focus on creative writing in the town. And a lot of that, I would have to say, it's down to Anthony. So well done, Anthony, on that. And I know you've done an amazing project here. Congratulations to all the writers. I haven't had a chance to flick through the book. I've seen the front cover. I'm looking forward to reading it, but I'm also looking forward to meeting a lot of you today if we have time. I'd also like to say thank you to Katrina O'Reilly, our arts officer, is here today. Katrina has been wonderful. She brought this event to us here, so thank you very much, Katrina, and for everybody that has helped out this morning. Annette is here, and also for the staff here, from the staff here in the library. I would also like to welcome Brendan Smith. Thank you so much for coming to us today. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. There's a couple of safety announcements I just need to mention. We have just, if you need to exit the building, you're going to exit through the large glass doors here to your left. If you'd like to explore the building, you can go up in the lift or you can use the stairs. There's access to, you're on the lower ground floor. The next floor up is the juvenile library, and the floor after that is the lovely space in the adult library. And I'd invite you all to go and have a look around today. It's absolutely lovely. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Cathaoirleach TP O'Reilly. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Good morning. It's a good honour to be here this morning to welcome you all to the Virginia Library and Cultural Civic Centre. As I say, this is the first book launch that we've had here. We've had plenty of art exhibitions and stuff like that, so it's great to see a diversity coming through where we have book launches as well. There's a few people I'd just like to thank. We know there's a collaboration between Cavan Arts and Cavan Age Friendly, so we have a lot of writers from Cavan and Tyrone, and it's good to see that collaboration of people coming together. So it's a fantastic initiative. Special thanks to Annetta and Katrina and Sinead here in the Arts Centre for hosting it here this morning. So a very much thanks to them. That's it. It's an honour for me, I suppose, to behalf on Cavan County Council to welcome you all here today and for the launch of this book. So without further ado, I think I'll hand you over to the author, Dr. Anthony Quinn, who will talk us through it, and just to say, well done to all involved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sinead, as well. It's great to be back in Cavan and in Virginia as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and fellow explorers of landscapes and the written word, thank you for joining us today as we launch this wonderful collection of stories, just hot off the press. We owe a debt of gratitude to the Cavan Older People's Council and Cavan Arts Office, especially Katrina, for their support in bringing this project to life. They say it takes an entire community to raise a child, but it also takes a vibrant and supportive community to bring a book like this to publication. And thanks also to Sinead for hosting us in this wonderful library. The writers in this anthology began a journey last May when I first sent them out with pen and paper to descend into the landscapes of their youth. So it was like the literary version of a treasure hunt, really. And what it's given us is this kaleidoscopic vision of Ireland, north and south. We get the multiple textures of small parishes, entrancing lochs, landmark hills, and city streets, revealing a literary geography that captures, among other things, the sociology of immigration, fraught mother-daughter relationships, loss, grief, as well as early romance. The COVID lockdowns of a few years ago galvanized a readership drawn to writing about the natural world, and the binding power of these new stories is landscape. One of the literary nuggets that inspired our workshops were the following lines from Patrick Cavan: "To know fully even one field or one land is a lifetime's experience. In the word of poetic experience, it is depth that counts, not width. A gap in a hedge, a smooth rock surfacing a narrow lane, a view of a woody meadow, the stream at the junction of four small fields. These are as much as a person can fully experience." Kavanagh's wise words have grown in relevance since the strange and closed days of the COVID lockdowns. We've all been turned in ourselves by experience of these past few years, but writing and sharing stories can be a powerful way to overcome this state of mind. So without further ado, I'm going to invite the writers up to read a short extract from their stories. Let the landscapes unfold and let their stories carry you away. And I hope you all find within the tales of this anthology the magic of your own childhoods and the joy of rediscovery. First, we're going to have Anne up.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to read a story in honour of my father, late father, watching TV back in the time. I called it the Wild West. Today is Saturday, and myself and my brother Pat get to stay up late and watch television. We only have two stations, RTE1 and RTE2. Lots of houses rent the televisions, but we have our own television. It takes up one big corner in the house. I woke up early and looked out the window on this April morning. Great, I thought. The sun is shining and it's only 8 o'clock. After I get dressed and wash my face, I run outside to find Dolly, our dog. I love her. We have this dog 2 years now. Dad bought her for us at Christmas time. She sleeps in the hay shed at night where it's nice and warm. I could have done that like that now when there was frost there last week. Dolly would eat anything, especially soft bread and milk and bread soaked in milk. I run up to Lynch's field behind the house, and Dolly follows me. We both run up and down the field. I try to catch her, but she's too fast for me. About half an hour, I run back into the house and nearly knock my mother down, who is cooking Flanagan's porridge on a cream agar cooker. She laughs and said, "Oh, I wish I had your energy, daughter dear. Sit down and I'll give you some breakfast." "Oh, thanks, ma'am. I love your sweet pancakes. You're the best." Our kitchen walls are light and pink in colour, and beside the white lace window wall are photographs of me and my younger brother and my Aunt Eileen in Dublin and her family. A blue table with old strong wooden chairs are arranged beside the window for light. The floor is covered with dark red tiles that lead into the hall and can be very cold in the morning until Mum lights the cooker. As you enter the kitchen, there's a water font, always full of not holy water, so you have to bless yourself before you get into the kitchen. A large black leather couch sits at the back wall. There's a special armchair for Dad. He sits in it at night with his feet up on a stool where he watches TV, and I usually have to change the channels and stations for him because I sit on one of the kitchen chairs beside him. The tube radio on the wooden shelf is always on in the kitchen. Mum loves her entertainment while she's doing her kitchen chores. Dad comes into the kitchen just as we finish eating. Hi, Dad, I said. What time are we going to Ballygym stuff? Oh, in the evening, Anne, around 5 p.m. You have to help Mum with the housework first. And Dad leaves after his breakfast of scrambled egg, bacon and toast. He has to put up a fence at the top meadow and milk the 5 cows in the field. Ma'am, are you going to watch the late film with us later? I asked. No, I'll be reading Ireland Eye magazine. I love to read the stories and jokes, she said. I'll sit in the armchair in the dining room with a big coal fire on. On the way back from town, the brown shopping bag was full of tater, salt and vinegar crisps, red lemonade and Ricky's Milky Milk sweets. Dad got the latest edition of Ireland's Eye magazine for Mum and a packet of Kimberley biscuits to have with a cup of tea of Lion's tea. The film is in black and white western. Cowboys and Indians were chasing each other through the hills and mountains of Arizona and Utah. Why did they shoot and kill, I asked. Dad said 2 of the main actors in the film was John Wayne and James Stewart. He never gets killed and only goes after the bad boys, Dad said. Oh, don't be sad, Anne. It's only a film. These are actors and they get well paid to work in the films. But it's so real, Dad. I keep forgetting it's only acting. Why is there always a woman wearing a long white dress in the film? Dad said. She always falls when she runs, just as the Indians are going to kill her. Watch, Dad. Then the Indian is shot by one of the men hidden behind a tree. Dad said they have to have a love story in the film, and John Wayne or James Stewart usually rescues the lady from the Indians. This makes the film more interesting. Then they go back to the nearest salon and have a bar gunfight brawl. Time for bed, and Dad said. Mass in the morning at 10 o'clock. Did you polish my brown shoes? Ah, yes, Dad, I did. Thanks, he said. Oh, I'm so tired. I wonder what the film will be next Saturday night. Thanks, Dad, for the wonderful memories. And every time I see a black and white film now, I feel that Dad's present is beside me on the sofa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Anne, for that lovely story about the Wild West of Cavan and a really faithful kind of recounting of the bond between father and daughter. We're going to move now to Tyrone and to the work of Deirdre McKenna, who's going to read her story, The Wonderment of Wellies.
Good morning. I was saying to one of my neighbours this morning, I lost a crown between Christmas and New Year, and I really could have been doing with a full set of teeth for this occasion. So bear with me if I'm a bit yappy. The Wonderment of Wellies. Do wellies ever wear out? I don't remember seeing or hearing of a pair of worn-out wellies. As I recall, growing up one of 6 youngsters on our farm, they always outlived the change in size of each child's foot. Passed down then to the next, where 2 or 3 pairs of socks on smaller feet made their fit almost right, but never quite right. Did wellies ever make a perfect fit? I can't remember that either. Didn't the high-leg, tough, unyielding rubber wallop roughly off our legs? And didn't the thick, rainproof foot step heavy, with little bend or fold? A clumsy progress through what was often sucking soil. And did wellies remember the paths and places their former wearers went? Recognising this bog or ditch and bracing themselves again for stuckness on these new feet? Or did they feel the pride this latest hero felt in conquering the mucky sodden depth and breadth of shocks? Are wellies disappointed in the language that's used? No swift or skip or dancing words describe their wear, but glob and glug and squelch and splash, a gutsy belly-bottomed splurge instead. Thicker words that matched their toughened substance made a sound as pleasing though. Throaty, solid, hefty strains flesh out a highfalutin tune. Keep it humble, as it were. And maybe that's their gift. For you just can't lord it over when you've got your wellies on. Nor try to set yourself above loftier than another. Wellies' thick-soled rubber toughness makes an equal of us all. Keeps us all broad-footed, all measured in our stride. So here's to well-worn wellies and the simple, useful greatness they inspire.
Thank you very much, Deirdre. Who knew a story of rubber footwear could sing so beautifully? There's a fine tradition of heroines and their footwear in storytelling. Think of Cinderella and her glass slippers, Dorothy and her red slippers. But as a true man, give me Deirdre's muddy wellies any day. Next up is Evelyn with a story about locks.
Good morning, everybody. I grew up in County Mayo near a lake that became a playground for my 5 brothers and myself. The fact that it was a grazing area for cattle did not hinder our escapades of exploring, experiencing, and the exploits of children. If we were not at home, everyone knew where to find us. Crossbeg Loch was clearly marked on the map, but we knew it as the Turlough. It is actually a seasonal lake that became totally dry during spring and summer months. As such, it was enshrouded by a sinister phantom we knew as Pulsluggaja. This spirit drowsed in the swallow hole on the lower side of the field. This zone was out of bounds in case the spook of the waters absorbed us as it opened its wide gurgling throat to gulp and swallow the waters of the lake. We laughed at this warning, but still, we were wary enough of its magical powers and kept our distance. As soon as dry land showed, we ran, jumping, skipping, and turning cartwheels on the dry carpet, which was speckled in many shades of green with new herbal plants, dotted with yellow and pink, purple, white, and blue flowers. Added to all of this, there was a pungent aroma of sweet mint that grew stronger as we sprung all over it. The goalposts for the boys were dragged out from under the firs and pounded into the level grazing field next to the roadway. Summer came in to the chorus of cheers from all footballers, young and older, who could see the Turlough. Believe it or not, Mayo won the All-Ireland in 1951. In 1951, the winning captain, Sean Flanagan, returned home afterwards to play and coach the boys on the grass where he himself was played as a youngster. Later on in September, Pulsluggaja restored the water again. The boundaries were well defined by shores, field boundaries, or cattle fences. A frozen lake is a frozen lake in winter dissolved boundaries as if we were daring enough to test the icy bridge's ability to bear our weight. Now, the older siblings were joined by their friends. They daringly held white-knuckled hands and slid in a long line across deep water as far as the wooded island. "What was that?" screamed some skaters in a high-pitched music that could be heard from the ice bridge squeaking under the weight and movement of the skaters. Music, 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 chorused the skaters. Their trained ears could read the reassuring tones that all was well. The duller warning of a groaning monster about to crack open would send echoes of skates scampering to slide off the ice.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Evelyn's been very fortunate in her life in that her nearest neighbours have always been lochs, turlochs, various bodies of water, and her story powerfully captures how our lives and our imaginations can be fed by nature. Next up, we have Sheila.
I'm not as eloquent as our previous Tyrone speaker.
Not half.
All right, where do I start? Right, I'm going to start on this page here. Let me get to the front line here. At the mill race, the river was diverted towards the mill, and the water turned the mill wheel and they crushed the corn. This corn will be placed in intrigue and noise and danger for the children, and we were warned not to go in by ourselves. And the man who owned the mill was called Frank McVeigh. He was a lovely man, but he was skeletal thin and his hands big, long, bony fingers, and he looked like a lurch out of the Addams family. Frank would push the creaky door open into the mill, and once it opened, it revealed a dark, dusty, noisy interior. And when their eyes were adjusted to the dark, they would see the particles of dust floating down in the atmosphere. And there was a glint of sunshine coming through the small window. He would then beckon them up the creaky staircase to the second floor. They always walked with their back against the wall, scared stiff of the moving machinery. It was so noisy that they had to cover their ears. There were shouts and bellows and vibrating dust extractors and grinding stones, all creating a very dangerous place. As many as one lost their fingers, and indeed a hand working in the mill. They had visited the mill many times in the past with their father on the horse and cart to get the corn crushed for the animals and flour for the house. As they walked on from the river and the corn mill, there was an apple orchard even, sort of hidden behind the mill, and they would sneak in, stealing or progging the apples. They knew they didn't mind that they were cooking apples. It was just the thrill of not getting caught. Further on, they would pass the dump, and there was abundance of brambles and lovely purple blackberries and gooseberry bushes and raspberry bushes. They had to be careful with the blackberries and the raspberries, for they'd stain their hands, as well as watching out that they didn't get worms in the berries. As scavengers would say, it was your own fault if you arrived home hungry. So they reached the crossroads, and there was a big two-storey dispensary house that in the past had been a school and then a doctor's dispensary, where the local midwife would come, health visitor was based. This was where the midwife was called from when Kathleen was born. She was the first child and a home birth, and lucky the midwife was handy because she was born a blue baby. Thanks to the midwife, she obviously survived, and the dispensary is now a family home. And at that crossroads, there was a splitting of the company in different directions. Kathleen and her siblings climbed a steep lane towards their single-storied farmhouse, surrounded by all the outhouses, the barns and the bars. And when they arrived, the front door was open, which was not unusual in the country at that time. They entered the front door, which was surrounded by seashells and broken delf and mirror pieces that was all the art deco of the time. The house was quieter than normal. The other children called out, "Mommy, where are you?" And after checking all the rooms, they found their father in bed feeling unwell. And he told them, "Mommy's away to town and she should be back soon. Kathleen, would you light the range and make a drop of tea for everyone? I will try a wee bit of soda bread and some tea as well." Kathleen listened and would do what she was told because she wouldn't want to raise his temper. He was usually a pleasant man, singing when he milked the cows or when he was sitting at night in their gas-lit kitchen. But when his temper was raised, his eyes turned black and the red mist came down and you knew you were in trouble. With the delegated responsibility, she went into the kitchen, cum dining area. The table still has a selection of unwashed breakfast dishes. And it was cool because the fire had now been out for a period of time. The modern mister's range at the centre of the kitchen provided the heat and warm water for the family. The black range was surrounded by a tiled background and a mantel. A wooden shelf overhung the space which held the clock, the battery radio, because there was no electricity. As she was the oldest, almost 11, she proceeded to put sticks on the paper on the small pieces of hard black turf on the great range. Jack, she said, will you go out to the boiler room and bring me in that jar of oil for the fire? And Jack came in with a jar of oil and she poured it slowly over the kindling. And before she had time to strike the match, whoosh, the flames burst out of the grate into her face. In that instant she froze, couldn't move. Are you all right? She checked with the other children. And thankfully they were fine. She reassured them, I'm okay, my face feels a wee bit warm, but I'll keep it cool. And then she directed Jack and Bridget, who were the next few years younger than her, don't tell Daddy, take some milk and bread and Mummy will be home shortly. Oh my God, what has happened to me, she said to herself. Thankfully she was able to open her eyes and see, and so her eyes were not affected and she needed to cool her face, so she ran outside to the bar. There was a large water tank for the cows and she immersed her face into the cold water. Oh bless the cold water on her burns. She was not worried about being surrounded by the smell of the cows, the cow manure in the stand and the hay strewn around her. Not the most hygienic area.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Sheila's story is called A Day to Forget, and it is a testament to the resilience we acquire through childhood mishaps. So thank you for bravely sharing this kitchen escapade and proving that even a day to forget can become a tale to remember. Next up, we have Ellen.
Hi everyone. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from Ireland, but I've lived in Tyrone for 27 years plus. And this story is based on my childhood memories, but I'm pretty sure most of you will be able to identify with it. It's called How Times Change. He reached for the heavy-bottomed glass tumbler, looking forward to savouring the tot of malt whisky, his regular evening treat. Settling back into his armchair, he closed his eyes and sighed. Where had all the years gone? He thought, as the strains of a Chopin piano concerto played on the radio and washed over him, and long-forgotten memories began to percolate up through his mind. Robert, pull your socks up and rub the flannel over your face, his mother said, as she grabbed the shopping bag and her purse off the kitchen table. We'll be off now, your gran will be waiting. Robert never minded going shopping on market day. In fact, it was a weekly treat during the school holidays. He loved the bustle and the noise. It was so colourful and full of life, with people rushing here and there, greeting each other in passing, or stopping for a proper chat, causing people to have to push past in the narrow aisles between the stalls. There was so much to see and hear, with all the different stallholders vying for the customer's attention. Come on, lad, said his gran with a smile. We haven't got all day. Your grandad will be waiting on his dinner before you know it. He stood spellbound, watching the man carelessly throwing cups and plates into the air before deftly catching them and packing them into a box. His patter never faltered as he performed, and Robert thought he should have been in the circus. Lovely bone china tea set, 6 of everything, best quality. You, love, this would look a treat on your dresser. And you, missus, yes, you in the lovely blue headscarf. Bet you wouldn't mind drinking tea out of one of these cups. He winked at the young woman who giggled and nudged her companion. Robert always secretly hoped he would drop something, but he never did. His gran liked the stalls selling jumpers and cardigans. She always dressed smart, even to go to the market, always in her hat and gloves. You never saw Gran in a headscarf with a pinny under her coat. She would spend ages comparing the different colours and styles. I don't know, Evelyn, she would say to his mother. Which do you think would go best under my grey coat? Robert never heard or cared what the answer was, as he was too busy looking at the fish on another stall. To him, they looked like aliens in his comic, with their dead eyes and strange shapes and colours. The fishmonger, in his blue and white striped apron and straw hat, was always on the move, chatting away as he gutted and sliced. Well, Mrs. Higginbottom, how about a nice bit of tripe today? Or maybe some smoked haddock, he would ask, while wrapping a piece of cod for the previous customer. Robert looked up, and sure enough, there were some rabbits and a pheasant hung from the stall. He had never seen a live pheasant, and had had to ask what kind of bird it was. His mother always made sure to get to the woman who sold material. There were big rolls of all kinds of fabric, with different designs and colours. She usually brought something, as she made most of her own clothes on their old Singer sewing machine. Robert dragged his eyes away from the fish as he heard her calling. Robert, come and see. I could make you some new pyjamas out of this. It's a lovely piece of flannelette, an end of roll so cheap enough. What do you think? Robert nodded enthusiastically. It was stripy like his dad's, more grown up, he thought. I could take some of that gingham as well. It would make nice curtains for the kitchen, she added. At last, they got to Robert's favourite stall. It was always full of exciting things to hanker after and to mither his mum and gran to buy for him. There were bows and arrows, big bright box kites, bags of jacks complete with little bouncy ball, footballs, yo-yos, skipping ropes. He had thought they were just for girls, but his dad had told him that boxers use them to train, so he thought he might try it. But the best thing to him were the jars of multicoloured glass marbles that sparkled like treasure in the light. You could choose half a dozen, and the cheerful lady with the crochet shawl over her shoulders would put them in a paper bag for you. There you are, love. Make sure you don't tear the bag now, or you'll lose the lot, she would say with a laugh. The last stop was at the fruit and veg stall, where the women would haggle trying to get the best price or an extra apple or two. His mum always brought veg for the week, and he knew from experience that the shopping bag would be heavy on the way home. The banging of a car door jolted him out of his reverie, and he blinked rapidly, caught momentarily in the half-world between past and present. The music from Classic FM continued to play, and he took a sip from his glass. The market had slowly disappeared with the advent of supermarkets and online shopping. Only a couple of stalls, selling what he considered to be cheap tat, turned up now. The town square no longer hummed with life, no longer echoed with laughter, gossip, and the raucous cries of the stallholders. Everything changes, sometimes without you noticing it. It can happen so slowly, he thought. But after a while, the changes assault you, forcing you to acknowledge them. Such is life, Robert thought. We all have to move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. It's wonderful to hear different landscapes told through different accents today. Ellen has another 2 landscape stories in the anthology, and she really kind of shows the advantages of anchoring our writing in a real place and the way we can draw inspiration and some old ghosts out of familiar streets and fields. Next up, we have Marie and her story, Pole Hill.
Pole Hill. 3 little girls stood under the black wooden gate, on their way to explore the world ahead. The gate creaked, the rustic hinges just there and no more. Years of wear and tear now showing. My Aunt Susie, Gerard, and her 2 daughters, just back a few years after the war. They were trying to build a model farm after many years of neglect, an accredited farm and a dairy herd to build up, water to be piped far up the mountain, and all to be achieved in just a few years. They were forward-thinking people. Mary, the oldest daughter, had gladly given up a life of education and a sedentary job to help her parents in their time. The aunt encouraged us in our venture, backpacks ready for our adventure ahead, diluting orange and homemade bread, soft and the smell alone filling a child with glee forever. And even when we climbed the chestnut tree, this woman just looked at us and sighed, saying, "It's a good sign of a child to try and get to the top of a tree." Something I remembered for all my days, and later with my own brood, letting them go wild, but that was okay. They were more careful than me. Our goal today was to climb to the summit of the Pole Hill. A trip through rugged gorse land and swampy bog lands. Only the dreams and curiosity of a child's heart could find the joy in this voyage. The same lands now are a different kind of adventure land, with 4-wheeled motorised vehicles and bigger kids with childhood dreams, still enjoying the thrill, now in Todd's Leap. But we were the first pioneers of this rugged ground. On we went, and the sun beamed down, and the birds ahead welcomed us to their homeland, wondering were we friend or foe. We were too small to cause alarm to these occupants of the moorland. They well knew foe, for each week a team of horse hunters played games and used them as prey for their evil sport. Agreed to fell, no respect for these noble creatures that God also made. Then we stumbled on a cottage, now the home of rooks and crows, busy rearing their young, building their homes to rear their young, always starting on the 1st of March. They had no need for a calendar, only the moon and stars to guide, a skill long lost by man and now produced on paper. The walls crumbling and the roof long gone, a 3-cornered garden laid out in daffodils, the blooms almost gone but still a memory. A family that once lived there, my mother's memories. Ward's cottage, the last to go. No call back to this rugged land for them. We felt that all we needed was before us. Adventure, the sun beaming down, the smell of the wonderful land filling our senses and energizing us to keep going. A hedgerow full of berries waiting to be picked and eaten. We learned their names, blaeberries. Only our rival, the birds, had a love also for these tidbits. Onwards we went, heads lighter, hearts beating faster. The love of adventure, a picnic to have when we reached the summit. And then at the top of the pole hill, yards ahead, faster we went, and then looking down, my God, Dunmoyle below, the little cottages, a white curling smoke rising, the green fields, a bigger house here and there, the men with their horses ploughing the fields, the turned soil drying in the heat of the day, ready for further work on a crop planted. A place of work and leisure, time to meet a neighbour on the winding road and exchange greetings, or the odd bit of a yarn. They all walked, no rushing. That's for a different world. They knew their place and worked peacefully with their environment, looking after it, caring for it, with aching and loving hearts. Their whistle and banter drifting up the landscape to the top of the pole hill. We sat in wonder for many minutes before our picnic began. Nothing could improve upon this sight.
Thank you, Marie. Marie's story is about a childhood hike up a hill. I'm proud to say that she's my mom. And I can safely say she's approached life's inclines, of which there have been many, and I should know, with the same awe, determination, and a well-packed snack for the summit. Next up, we have Bob to read his story.
From an early age, Teddy became fascinated with the legend of Fionn McCool and his band of warriors known as the Fianna. He learned how Fionn had gained his knowledge from having tasted the salmon of knowledge, which has eluded many great fishermen and scholars, but which he caught in the River Boyne. He learned how the Fianna travelled throughout the land, hunting, helping those in distress, and repelling raiders from the shores of Erin. His teacher, known by our pupils as Mrs. Grouch, encouraged him in his great interest and told him that the Fianna had not died, but were placed in a deep trance so that they could come back one day to save Ireland. Now, Teddy often privately bemoaned the fact that his parents had not called him Fionn or even Finbar, which could be shortened to Fionn. Of course, he didn't look like a Fionn, who was supposed to be fair-haired, while his hair was as black as the hide of an Aberdeen Angus cow. Sean, Teddy's father, worked as a forester, a job that mostly entailed tending young trees or marking mature trees for felling. Teddy, being a romantic as well as a fantasizer, would refer to Sean as a forest ranger. In his fantasy, Teddy saw his father as a human St. Bernard dog, rescuing walkers or campers who had gotten into difficulties. Sarah McCool was seriously concerned about her son, 16, handsome, intelligent, and a superb athlete who excelled in all sports. He seemed to have no desire for other human companionship. Ever since Mrs. Grouch had introduced him to the legend of the ancient warrior Fionn McCool, he had changed. He was a dreamer and imagined himself to be Fionn, fighting giants, saving damsels in distress, and repelling raiders. He climbed the hills with his 2 cocker spaniels, who became Fionn's wolfhounds. Most of his elders in the area thought him crazy, but Sarah knew that he was superior in all ways to his peers. None of his peers had his intelligence, his good looks, or his athletic prowess. Every genius was a little eccentric. In his efforts to emulate his peers, or his heroes, particularly their athletic prowess, Teddy had finished third in the South Leinster Cross Country Championship. Although quite a proficient hurler and footballer, most of his Sundays were spent climbing Slieve Wee, usually accompanied by Paddy Dineen and his 3 oldest children. Even as a 16-year-old, Teddy loved to play with Paddy's kids, pretending that they were the Fianna coming to the rescue of poor Paddy, who had been kidnapped by Welsh joints. One Sunday in early August of his 16th year, to Teddy's dismay and disappointment, Paddy and his kids didn't turn up for their rendezvous, so Teddy decided to climb alone. On the third, Terry saw his new circumstances not as a drawback, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to explore the hitherto unexplored, at least by Teddy, Jack's Fields. He scanned the cattle grazing under a stand of trees, but could not discern any sign of the dreaded bull. Filled with the confidence that he associated with Fionn, he ventured to the first field. So far, so good. Further emboldened, he ventured into the second field. He had not covered but 100 yards when he heard the aggressive lowing, which caused him to freeze on the spot. What would he do? Stand his ground or run? He heard the pounding of hoofs grow closer and closer. He decided that running was a safer option. His concentration, which was fully focused on reaching the fence at the far end of the field, was interrupted by a loud barking. Halting in his quest, he turned to see a large wolfhound distracting the bull. Seizing his opportunity, he sprinted and bounded clear of the fence into the wood. Looking back to see what had happened, with the hound and the bull, he espied the bull looking somewhat bewildered, but the hound was nowhere to be seen. Making his way up the mountainside, he spied a small herd of deer at a higher level. This excited him, as it was his first encounter, even at a distance, with deer. In his excitement, he thought he saw the hound running alongside a light-coloured fawn. His reverie once more returned to the legend of Fionn, and how one of the herd of deer was enchanted and became a beautiful girl with whom Fionn fell in love. He made his way up and back down the mountain without any further excitement. The following Sunday he was alone again on his climb. This time he avoided Jack's Fields and took the longer route. Pausing to eat some frothings that he had just picked, he spied the deer herd once more. He did not see the little fawn on this occasion. This gave rise once more to Teddy recalling the legend of the enchanted deer. He was startled out of his reverie when he spied a large hound bounding in his direction. It looked exactly like the one that had rescued him from the bull last Sunday. "Come back here, Bran," came a girl's voice. "He's okay, quite harmless. Really, let him lick the back of your hand." Teddy looked in the direction of the voice and found himself about 10 yards away from the most beautiful girl that he had ever beheld. Dumbstruck, he muttered, "Thanks," and held out his hand for Bran to lick. "You look like you're in shock or that you've seen a ghost," she chided him good-humouredly. "No, it's just that I never expected to meet a beautiful girl with a big hound at the Ladies' Walk. It's all too close to the myth, particularly when you know the story of Ladies' Walk. I can assure you that I'm no apparition. I'm Sive O'Sullivan. My father's a guard inspector. He's down here on some case or other, and we're renting a house in Raheen. Pleased to meet you, Sive. I'm Teddy McCool." "Pleased to meet you, Teddy Cool." "Sorry, it's McCool, as in the legend." "I know, Fionn McCool. I live in Holt, so I know the legend. How they are all sleeping in a cave in Holt, waiting for the trumpet to call them to defend Ireland. Anyway, I think that you are cool, so I will call you Teddy Cool. Okay?"
Thank you very much, Bob. As well as being a story about landscape and youth, Bob's story also has a thrilling kidnapping plot involving armed robbers and the Gardaí. Move over James Bond. There's a new hero in town, armed only with the power of nature and his daydreams. Thank you, Bob. Next up, we have Veronica to read her story.
Oh, God.
Well, my story's about, 12 pages long. I'll only read 10. I'll read 2. So I'll start kind of halfway through the beginning. It took us about 20 minutes to walk towards Tara Street Station. Sometimes we walked halfway across Butt Bridge to see if we could spot the thick-lipped mullets leap out of the water. We reckoned it was because they were gagging for air and the smell was getting to them. None of us had a watch, so we took pot luck regarding the time of the train. We queued, hopping from one foot to another, straining our ears for the arrival of the train. Tickets in hand, we darted in between mothers, holding the hands of young children with an iron grip. Gangs of teenagers joked and laughed loudly over the constant muffled sounds of announcements of trains arriving and departing. An old couple held hands with wise eyes that knew there will always be another train, knowing too that one day they will not be on board. And so they smiled at youth in all its glory, with faces bemused by the urgency of fellow passengers. They shuffled along the platform. The old man carried an old tartan rug, some sandwiches and a flask, tucked into a worn carpet bag. He wore a shiny cap on his head. Strands of dirty grey hair played with the wind. His crumpled jacket sported a blue handkerchief. He wore a smile of contentment as he walked hand in hand with his wife. Her faded dark green coat had seen many seasons. The light and shade of sunlight streamed along the platforms and played against a large red and white jewelled brooch on her lapel. A headscarf of muted blues and greys kept her perm in place. A small, shabby black handbag dangled from her hand. He wore a pair of old brown shoes, and his wife wore black flat ones. Both pairs were shiny like a new pin. A teenage couple were carelessly pushing in and out of the crowds, rushing to catch their train, when the boy accidentally bumped into the old man. His tie-dyed orange and red T-shirt flashed before the old man's eyes, and he had to steady himself before making sure his wife was okay too. "Are you okay, mister?" the teenagers asked. "We didn't see you. We're really sorry." "Ah, I'm all right," the old man said. "Go on, run and catch your train." The old couple didn't know if they were dazed by the knock that unsteadied them or were dazzled by the kids' clothes. "Did you see the get of them?" he laughed. "Yellow and red, crazy-looking T-shirt, and that was the fella. Did you see his baggy jeans sweeping the ground? Not to mention his dark green sunglasses. What did you think of the young one? Beads and bangles jangling from her neck and arms, and a long skirt and wild hair." His missus nodded her head. "Ah, young people today, sure they haven't got a clue. God love them." He winked at her and smiled. Sure, neither did we at their age. They continued towards their platform, each lost in their memories of their youth. If our platform was empty, we missed the train and had to wait for the next one. If the platform was bustling with people, we were in luck. The orange and black train rattled its way to the platform. We hopped on board, heading towards Pearse Street, before reaching the coastline of Booterstown and Blackrock. We scrambled off the train, clutching our towels and togs in an old shopping bag, and pushed past people on the platform to queue in line for our entrance tickets. The bats were built of concrete right on the seafront, with a tiered seating area for over 1,000 spectators, when back in the long distant past, high diving and synchronised swimming events were the order of the day. There is a plaque on the railway bridge that crosses over the bats, dedicated to Eddie Heron, undefeated springboard and highboard diving champ for 36 years. Views of Dublin Bay stretching from Howth Head to Dalkey and the ever-popular Dollymount Strand and Bull Island Nature Reserve could be seen on a clear day. Places we'd never been to and longed to explore. By the time we started swimming in Blackrock in the late 60s, they were already in decline. New indoor heated pools were coming into fashion. We didn't get one in our area until the 70s. Once in the pool, we splashed about amid screams and laughter with a plastic tube around our waist, progressing to armbands until one day, one by one, we could actually swim a few strokes unaided. The excitement and joy that all our efforts had paid off made us feel invincible. I remember screaming, I can swim," to the claps and laughter of those around me.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Veronica's tale about a girl defying her father and pursuing her diving dream is a lesson in tenacity, the kind that defies the laws of both gravity and parental guidance. Next up, we have Marion.
Hi everyone, my story is called Ireland, My Island, and I'm going to read from my memories of 1969. 1969 was a big year in terms of world events. Space exploration was high on the American agenda and included the first moon landing. The Concorde was being tested in France and Charles, Prince of Wales, was invested at Carnarvon. There were funny goings-on with a family called Manson, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono were making bedline news. For Ireland, and Northern Ireland in particular, it was the start of the British Armed Forces deployment in Northern Ireland as part of the Troubles. In August 1969, my family took the usual pilgrimage to visit our Irish family in North Monaghan. We travelled from London to Liverpool Lime Street and the Royal Albert Docks, and as usual, the whole journey was teeming with people and confusion and heavy cases and new but smelly diesel engines that had replaced steam trains, and the very loud guard whistles and muffled ton-eye announcements and the dreaded London Underground. The boat itself was crowded. My family couldn't find seats altogether, so my sister and I sat outside on the deck floor, where many people were already sleeping. This was quite normal then, unless you were well off and could afford cabins. It was evening and the journey to Belfast would be about several hours, the total journey from our home near London, near on 24 hours if you included time waiting around. Once docked in Belfast, the next stage of the journey was getting to Dungannon, and it was during the initial bus journey that I saw sights which will stick in my mind forever. There was confusion in the bus terminal, like the normal service had been disrupted. There was tension among the fellow travellers and conversation was hushed. The bus was delayed on its departure. Copious amounts of baggage were loaded. All seats were taken with passengers and crammed to the hilt with smaller bags and packages. No one was left standing. I don't know which route they took. My head was too full of other things, but here's what I did see. Total and devastating mayhem with armed soldiers everywhere, piles of bricks and smoke where once was a terraced house or two or three, barricades as deep as they were high, filled with barbed wire, tables, chairs, old and rusty mangles, prams and pushchairs. The smoke filled the skies in different locations and people were scurrying around, and it didn't feel like they were off to do a job of work. The bus was boarded and inspected by young armed soldiers and their corporal. Some might say they were on heightened alert, but I would say they were unnerved. Who knows what they had already witnessed at this stage? Probably enough to explain the look in their eyes. I don't remember feeling anxious about any of this. It was just like being a spectator. We eventually travelled. I can't remember if it was all bus or part bus, part train. The whole journey melds into one, from Belfast City into the lovely, calm countryside where all appeared well. As usual, my Uncle John from Eden Crannan met us in Dungannon and took us through Auchnacoil to the family home in Clara. I remember not much was said about this whole experience by the adults, not in our earshot anyway. Auchnacoil was still our town. We still had family and friends there, and we visited it almost daily, either walked in or cycled. And as was the way then. I don't remember ever feeling a sense of them or us, because everyone we met was so warm and friendly. It would be months yet before the people of Auchnacoil and True would feel the full brunt of this uneasy period in Irish history. I have a photo of me and my sister walking up Moore Street in Auchnacoil, taken by my dad in August 1969, one of his last and not one of his best. He died in December 1969, a victim of the Hong flu pandemic after it reached British shores, one of 30,000 UK deaths and up to 3 million worldwide. All future visits to Ireland from 1969 onwards and until after the Good Friday Agreement were made via Dublin.
Thank you very much, Marion. It's a lovely story of the fraught crossings between England and Ireland. There's also a story about mother-daughter relationships, which delicately peels back the layers of family history. But we're coming to our final two speakers, writers this evening. With Kathleen up first to read her story.
Done this before, so my story is a story of emigration from Tyrone, from my family and my 15-year-old self, a twin sister, but anyway, bear with me. Off to America in 1961. I always say we started the year 1961 alongside JFK. Same year, same youthful enthusiasm. As a newly minted immigrant versus young president, both of us standing together on the cusp of a brand new adventure. While emigration underpinned the theme of our story, his vision of a new dynamic world order and a way forward was promised for America. My father, Mick Kelly, had passed away on July 18th, 1959. My mother, Rose, had lost her beloved husband, Mick, whose love and support she had deeply depended upon. The situation was very serious. It was at this point my mum's brother, Peter and Terence, convinced her to return with them to the US, where a more secure future would be ensured for her young family. At the same time, our Uncle John, a successful businessman in the town, tried to convince Mum to stay, that he wanted to help out, to take care of the family. But it was too late. Mum had already made up her mind. She had decided her best option would be to leave 6 Mile Cross and head to America. Arrangements were made through the booking agent Charles McAleer in Oma, and the date was set for April 24th, 1961. We would travel, Mum, my sister Anne, and I to Cove, and set sail on the SS United States to New York. Very few people outside of the family knew of our impending departure. Mum didn't want a scene, and besides, they could talk about us when we were gone. Of course, we were excited, but anxious too. What would this whole new world entail? So long, St. Mary's Hall in Barra, hello to the City Centre Ballroom in New York. No more Cliff Richard, or jiving to, bring on jiving to Elvis and Patsy Cline. Ricky Nelson singing Hello Mary Lou, and Roy Orbison singing Pretty Woman and Candyman. But we would miss our school pals at the convent in Oma, and we sorrowfully said our goodbyes to our classmates at the clock in the refectory. Our neighbours, would we see them again? After a few weeks, these fears dimmed and were replaced with youthful expectation and consolation that Mum was right there at our side. The fact that my mother had spent 4 years in New York in her early 20s meant that the new order would not be completely alien to her, so we made ready to sail. The night before we left was sad and difficult as we said goodbye to our other brothers and sisters. We comforted ourselves that we would see each other soon. Sure, wasn't airlines, didn't they have flights daily? Once we got jobs, etc., sure we could take a trip home. Tears still prick the ear ducts when I dare recall those memories. They must be kept in a box and opened very carefully and not too often. There just remained a last goodbye to Mum's good friend, Mrs. Mac, next door, and she duly appeared next morning and sprayed us generously with her bottle of holy water. So, sufficiently armed with the Holy Spirit, we prepared for set off. Our cousin, Father Michael Toll, drove us all the way from Tyrone to Cork, a long journey of about 400 miles. It being April, the weather was raining and unpleasant as we drove down the middle of Ireland through those grey towns, rampant with dereliction, very little life about them, and it seemed no future for them at all. All very depressing. But sure, these were the early 60s, unemployment was widespread, no work and bad housing, and there was very little opportunity. Other young people were deciding to leave too, I surmised. We reached the port of Cork Cove by early evening on the 24th of April and got settled into a B&B just across from the terminal building. Years later, when we went back to Cove, we searched for that same bright yellow facade that had beckoned us forth 25 years before. The morning of the 24th came early, and from our bedroom window, we could see this giant liner, the SS United States, sitting majestic-like out on the horizon, a regal presence in Cork Harbour. Such excitement, but not a minute to wait, as we had to claim our places on the tender. We learned the name of the tender was the SS Killarney. As we embarked upon this trusty craft, the sound of sobbing filled the morning air. An undercurrent of sadness and loneliness cut through the large crowd. However, we felt slightly different. Freedom, opportunity, the crack, handsome husbands, all beckoned to our 15-year-old selves. What were they crying for, we thought? Didn't they not realise the land of opportunity was beckoning? Meanwhile, luggage of all kinds, trunks and suitcases and well-wrapped boxes, all with their own little stories to tell, were being packed on board. Amid this heavy mass of immigrants and travellers, we stood counting ourselves lucky that our family was intact and that we had the support and friendship of each other. All the way out on the tender, the sadness was palpable, only fading with the excitement of seeing this giant liner ahead. This beast-like ship beckoning us forward through the cloudy, murky morning shadows, its horns bellowing out sounds of welcome like a maritime chorus. Passengers aboard the liner, nationalities of all kind, gathered on deck to wave us and bid us an early morning greeting. There were people who had boarded in Germany and England who welcomed this band of travellers from the Emerald Isle. The tender bobbed back and forth like a speck on the ocean compared to the mother ship, which was ready to enfold us. Shortly, when we were aligned with a large flap-like opening on the side of the giant liner, we were told to step briskly over a treacherous-looking ramp and make our way into the middle of the ship. Shortly thereafter, we were processed and assigned cabins and berths. The mere size and space was overwhelming. We were filled with anticipation and curiosity as we made our way forward. Our first ride on a lift, or as the Americans there called it, the elevator. It reminded me of the story of Jonah and the whale, where he lived in the belly of the whale for 3 days. Our stay was longer, a full 7 days, 2 days over schedule. A rampant storm gathering over the Atlantic was to blame, and so the trip became a giant battle between us and the angry ocean, a tale filled with excitement, anxiety and fear as we threw ourselves at the mercy of the beast who was going to deliver and protect us from the raging sea.
Thank you, Kathleen. How lovely it is to hear different journeys, different landscapes, different accents as well. I was kind of thrown with a mid-Atlantic twang. Thank you for turning immigration into a biblical adventure. Last, but by no means least, we have Olga to read her story.
Hi everybody, I'm Olga, and I started my life in London, and from there I went to Wales, and from there to Dunleary, and after that to Colester, and then between Colester, Kildare and Carlow. So just this little sample of the house that I went to. There was still 2 children of school-going age. They went to school the next day full of excitement as they had a story to tell. Annie's younger sister, whom I had been called after, she held the big brown penny over the box for the black babies, not really wanting to part with it, thinking of what she could buy with it on her way home after school. Teacher, we got our black baby yesterday, so do I still have to put the penny in the box, or can I buy sweets with it? It was Vanessa who told me this years after. My grandmother and the teacher laughed about it at the time. Rose explained, we have adopted a baby. No, she's not black, just happens to be dark-skinned, Italian, I think. How easy it was for her for the lie to roll off her tongue, one of many that would confuse me for a long time to come. I never questioned anything I heard or saw. I accepted everything. The first few years were uneventful. I assumed I was the youngest daughter of the house, and no one told me otherwise. I do not remember much of the first 4 or 5 years, except for my grandfather. He would read to me and try to teach me how to draw. I could never master the skill of drawing, but I got my love of reading for him. I read everything that came my way, even the poems of Alexander Pope, from a tiny book belonging to my grandfather. The book was so small, even in my tiny hands, it made me feel like a giant. I came across a book by Alexander Pope called The Pope Collected Poems from Every Man's Library, and I would like to share the second verse of a particular poem with you as it puts me in mind of my grandfather. I sit sometimes and wonder about how he felt when he died. Was he afraid? Or was he relaxed and serene as he was in life? The poem is called The Dying Christian to His Soul. Hark, thy whisper, angels say, sister spirit, come away. What is this absorbs me quiet, steals my senses, shuts my sight, drowns my spirit, draws my breath? Tell me, soul, can this be death? I wish I had that pocketbook copy now. I did not understand all the poems I read or what the words even meant. I love poetry, but still find it hard to understand Alexander Pope.
Thank you very much, Olga. Olga's story is a really powerful exploration of family history, riddled with puzzling questions, and it's an act of courage and vulnerability in itself. So I'd just like to give a final cheer to all the writers today and for the wonderful journeys that you've taken us through different landscapes with your very distinctive and wonderful voices. Thank you very much. I feel really honoured to have been able to kind of mentor and be a guide and share those journeys with you over the last 7 or 8 months or so. Thank you, everybody, very much.